We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to episode number 71 of the Politics Show. Thank you for joining me if you're here. It's a little early. It's a little earlier than I normally do this, so I'm not going to be mad if my normal friends aren't in the chat today. But there's a lot to talk about, and I kind of pulled this together on a whim. I'm trying to at least do one of these shows every week. And last night I came home super late and I was like, I don't really have anything put together, but I woke up early this morning and I put a bunch of stuff together for you. Well, for me to talk about. And it's going to be an interesting show. There's a lot to cover. And let's get in on it. So the first thing I want to talk about is Venezuela. So I don't know if you've heard this or not, but there was a recent incident that happened in Venezuela. Well, first of all, we attempted to basically replace their leader. If you've been following the election stuff, you know, this is what the U.S.'s game is. We just basically said their election was fraudulent and that we don't honor the results because we don't like Maduro. And I'm going to go into the reasons behind that dislike here in just a second. But that's really the genesis of all this. If you remember when Trump was president, they tried to replace Maduro with a guy named Juan Guaido, and it just failed miserably. Did not actually pan out the way they hoped. So, this tweet here from your boy Megatron. Wow. Let me just get that back to normal size. Venezuela says it has seized. Let me enlarge this. Venezuela says it has seized 400 U.S. rifles and arrested foreigners, Americans among them, over an alleged plot to destabilize the country. Is anyone keeping track of how many failed coup attempts there have been in Venezuela over the past 20 years? This is via CNN, so no, I haven't kept track. Have you? Do you know how many coups there have been attempted on Venezuela? So let's go into the weeds a little bit here and read this article from the People's, what is it called? The People's Dispatch. I don't know how legit this source is, but I'm going with it because I didn't want to read CNN or MSNBC. We're going to bring them in later. Venezuela announces dismantling of CIA-backed coup plot. The coup comes just a month and a half after President Nicolas Maduro was reelected in the presidential election, which to date the U.S. has refused to recognize. In a press conference given on September 14th, Venezuelan Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello announced that the authorities had dismantled an operation reportedly backed by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States and the National Intelligence Center of Spain, which sought to assassinate President Nicolas Maduro. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, Cabello, and other government officials, the minister announced that Venezuelan authorities had seized 400 weapons from the U.S. and arrested 14 mercenaries who were involved in the plot. Among the arrested is Wilbur Joseph Castaneda, an active U.S. military officer and Navy SEAL. 2 Spanish citizens were reportedly also arrested, Jose Maria Basua and Andres Barasbe. So here apparently is the guns, the weapons that they confiscated. Officials stated that according to a document they seized from one of the detainees, the plot included attacking the Miraflores Palace and other public institutions, in addition to carrying out sabotage actions against various public services to generate chaos. Now, one of the reasons that I believe this without question is because our foreign policy is our domestic policy. And this is exactly the kind of shit that they did in the last election cycle with the J6 bullshit. And this is the kind of shit that you're going to, I'm sure, see a lot of in the coming months. So he added that the weapons seized by authorities were brought to the country in apparently legal shipments and received by groups linked to the extreme right. One of the leaders of the illegal trafficking network in the country, Cabello claimed, is a man who is already a fugitive from Venezuelan justice, Ivan Simonovas, because the capture of this weaponry here in Venezuela, they have taken actions in other countries that have included the murder of people. Simonovas knows what I'm talking about, he stated. Venezuela has demanded that the United States government respond to the incident and clarify the use of its agencies and use of its territory to traffic weapons aimed at overthrowing a democratically elected government. You think Biden knows about this? I want to play you a clip of Biden. Just this is a little bit random, but I just want you to remember who the president was very recently. Watch this.
I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. You can beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President, you are.
So that's the guy that's currently the president. He just introduced, this is, from months ago, of course, but he introduced the president of Ukraine as Putin, President Putin. That's the guy who's controlling the levers of this quote unquote coup attempt in Venezuela. So, I mean, point being, he's not controlling jack shit. So to close this out, this right here is the reason that this is a thing. You're about to see. Let me pause this. Okay. So this right here, my spidey senses tingled when I saw this, because I'm pretty positive this right here is the reason that there are coup attempts being leveled against Venezuela. Venezuela President Maduro, Hitler's final solution was to finish off those who were not of Aryan race, just like the U.S. empire, and Netanyahu aimed to finish off our Arab and Palestinian brothers. Honor and glory to the Palestinian people. Palestine resists, and Palestine will win.
La solución final de Hitler, ¿de qué se trataba? De acabar con todos aquellos que no fueron raza aria y de acabar con los judíos, como hoy pretende el imperio norteamericano y Netanyahu acabar con nuestros hermanos árabes palestinos, con nuestros hermanos musulmanes. Honor y gloria al pueblo palestino. Palestina resiste y Palestina vencerá. La solución.
So there you go. My suspicion is that position that Maduro's taking right there is likely one of the reasons his country is dealing with multiple coup attempts. So that's what's going on in Venezuela. That's the newest news. Before this happened, before this, all these weapons were found and all this, I'm sure you know that they basically, the U.S. kind of stopped a plane in the Dominican Republic. And it's just evident that our leadership is out of control, if you can call it leadership, because we don't really even know who's running things right now. But things are out of control. And it's pretty clear that the rationale behind these kind of belligerent maneuvers that we're making as a country is what's going on in the Middle East. So let's move on. Let's talk about the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, which already seems like it happened months ago, doesn't it? It happened Tuesday. It hasn't even been a week since that happened, by the way. Today is Sunday. That debate happened on Tuesday. The way that the news cycle, I think, kind of wears us all down. It does seem like an eternity. It's been an eternity since this debate happened. But let's watch a couple of the highlights and talk about it a little bit, because I only do this once a week, so I'm a little late to comment on some of this stuff, but I think I have some takeaways that might be worth hearing. So let's start with some of these highlights here.
She has no policy. She has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. She has no policy.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
No, I want the war to.
I love the way that they always frame this. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war.
Business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. Business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both.
So after this, Kamala came out with a post about banning assault weapons, so everyone kind of called her a liar. And then, of course, the highlight of all highlights, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala after the debate, and the world rejoiced. And
Joy, 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 joy.
so one of the biggest moments, of course, at the debate, and I knew as soon as I saw the comment, this was going to be what everyone was going to be talking about for the next 3 months. You know it. You love it. It's Trump talking about people eating dogs. This guy just has a innate talent for dominating. It doesn't matter whether what he says is intelligent or not. He just has an innate talent for dominating the news cycle. Here's Trump's greatest hit from the debate.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
The debate highlight moment, of course, Trump talking about eating pets. So after the debate, the debate was widely heralded as a big win for Kamala Harris, which they set the bar so low that all she really had to do was talk coherently, and the press would receive her as the second coming of Christ or whatever, which is exactly what happened. After the debate, of course, Taylor Swift came out. But I do think there were a couple things that Harris did very well. And I'm not going to go dig up these clips, but there was a point when she specifically said something to Trump about his crowd sizes. She's like, "Oh, your crowd, your people are leaving your rallies because they're bored," and that triggered him. That made him angry. And the response she got out of him after that, he was like, "Oh, you don't even have rallies. Nobody likes it," And I think from that optic standpoint, you could say that she definitely won the day. Objectively, she came out of that looking like a winner. But I mean, they clearly set it up with that purpose in mind. the people who run the debate. There were reports before the debate that one of her friends runs ABC. A lot of people, there's conspiracy theories that she had an earpiece, which I would not doubt, given the way technology is these days. But I wanted to show you Kamala post debate because she did this interview. And again, I think when I saw this, it just reminded me why I didn't like Kamala Harris to begin with. So let's watch this for a minute and talk about it.
Sitting here in a state and arguably in front of an audience that 54 days from now could decide the outcome of this presidential election. You hear it more than I do. People want to know more about you and about your specific plans. At the debate the other night, you talked about creating an opportunity economy. I wonder if we can drill down on that a little bit. When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are one or two specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. She was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community.
So right off the bat, what does that have to do with his question? She pivoted to this a lot during the debate. Just, it's just kind of like the guess what? I'm from a middle class family, even though I was the AG of California.
Hardworking people, construction workers and nurses and teachers. And I try to explain to some people who may not have had the same experience, but a lot of people will relate to this. I grew up in a neighborhood of folks who were very proud of their lawn, and I was raised to believe and to know that all people deserve dignity, and that.
One second. Did she just say, I grew up in a neighborhood where people were really proud of their lawn, and then something about dignity?
Relate to this. I grew up in a neighborhood of folks who were very proud of their lawn, and I was raised to believe and to know that all people deserve dignity, and that we as Americans have a beautiful character. We have ambitions and aspirations and dreams, but not everyone necessarily has access to the resources that can help them fuel those dreams and ambitions. So when I talk about building an opportunity.
No, I just want to say, Kamala Harris, first of all, she's a very pretty woman. She's a very attractive woman. But she seems like a nice enough person. And I think with the Joe Biden thing, right? It's like, I never hated Joe Biden as a person. Joe Biden had some good, one-liners and stuff. Like, remember when in the debate against Rudy Giuliani, when he said, whenever Rudy Giuliani makes a sentence, he just does a noun, a verb, and 9/11. Like, that was good, and Biden, he had some, as a person, I guess, the point I'm making here is I don't dislike Kamala Harris as a person. She seems like a nice enough person. What I dislike is the group of people who elevated this person to the level where they're the nominee of the party. And that's how I felt about Biden. Like, I didn't necessarily hate Joe Biden as a person. I hated the people around him that elevated him to that position as a means of stomping out Bernie Sanders. So anyway, back to Kamala's word salad. We won't watch all of this because it's like 10 minutes long.
It is very much with the mind of investing in the ambitions and aspirations and the incredible work ethic of the American people, and creating opportunity for people, for example, to start a small business. My mother, worked long hours, and our neighbor helped raise us. We used to call her, I still call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small business owners. I learned who they are from my childhood, and she was a community leader.
Okay, so the question was, can we go into the details a little bit about when you talk about an opportunity economy, what does that mean? How are you going to create that? And she's responding with this kind of very what's a good word? Esoteric, I guess, kind of like thing about working people and how she knows working people. Interesting.
Hired locally, she mentored. Our small businesses are so much a part of the fabric of our communities, not to mention, really, I think the backbone of America's economy. So my opportunity economy plan includes giving startups a $50,000 tax deduction to start their small business. It used to be $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. But investing in people's innovative ideas and giving them the ability to go for it. Opportunity economy means, look, we don't have enough housing in America. We have a
Okay, so listen, that's fair enough. And this guy is basically saying that everything she says here is dumb. And I mean, the way that she opens that, kind of leading into the whole thing about small businesses and how I know small businesses, and then she pivots to this thing about, hey, you know, we're gonna try to give people better loans, or you know, help encourage small business owners. I mean, I think that's good on the surface, but it also doesn't tackle what the main problem is, which is a lot of the money that you would need for a project like that is being dumped into other countries. And just to kind of pivot a little bit, one of the people who is kind of talking about that is JD Vance. And, you know, I don't necessarily think that JD Vance was the best pick on the part of the Trump campaign, but I do think that he is much better at these media appearances than Trump is. And watch how he handles Dana Bash going at him right here. So it's funny because most people can see how tilted the media landscape is against anyone who is a threat to the established order. And people like Dana Bash and Welker from MSNBC or NBC, Meet the Press, they're put there to to kind of foment this this discontent towards anyone who is oppositional to the status quo, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. And we're going to pivot now to Jill Stein. And she was recently on The Breakfast Club. Now, The Breakfast Club is one of those shows that it's kind of got hip hop credibility. Charlemagne, I think, is great. You know, I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff. But I think I like the way that, first of all, the fact that they had Jill Stein on The Breakfast Club is great on its own. You know, I mean, I will give them credit for that. They definitely went at her. It looked like it was like as an attempt to kind of take her down, because I think the DNC knows that inner city people, and especially Muslims and Middle Eastern people who are against what's going on in the Middle East, are not going to vote for the Democrats. So Jill Stein has kind of presented this third way, this third kind of option where you don't have to vote for Trump or Kamala Harris if you want to vote at all. But I think this cycle presents an opportunity that is twofold. And that opportunity is, one, to maybe get the Green Party public funding. Maybe if enough of the progressive movement or the people who are kind of disaffected by the Democrats vote for the Green Party, they could get to a 5% point where, then they're a real viable option. I mean, they already kind of are, as Jill Stein kind of touches on in the interview, which I'm going to play some clips off Twitter from, because I don't want to get completely, thrown off YouTube for copyright. But I think that opportunity, the Green Party is already on the ballot in most states. I think there's only like 3 states that they're not on the ballot. So if they can get to this next rung of public funding and be more of a, threat to the 2-party system, that's a good thing. And the second piece of that is you can also give the Democrats a massive L, which they deserve, and kind of show the power that the progressive movement has acquired or kind of grown into. I think there's also a big opportunity to take away a chunk of Trump's voters for Jill Stein as well. And I think that, once it was Keaton actually from Due Dissidence who made this argument, and he made it very well, that we should wear, if the Democrats are going to come at us for and blame us for losing the election to Trump, we should wear that like a badge and say, yeah, you did lose the election because of us. So next time you're going to listen to us or you're going to lose again. Filthy bastards. So this first clip is basically Angela Rye kind of revealing herself as a DNC operative. And this guy makes a great point here. So he says, love to see Angela Rye is trending because she's being dragged for the ambush attack she did on Jill Stein and being an insufferable Dem shill. When Stein hit her with the white supremacist talking point lines, she went off the rails. Yeah. Because, so here, let's watch this clip real quick.
But here's one thing I think we can agree on. Either you win or lose this election. There's really no in between. Dr. Stein, in 2002, you ran for governor of Massachusetts and you lost. In 2004, you ran for state representative in Massachusetts and you lost. In 2006, you ran for secretary of the Commonwealth. You also lost. In 2010, you ran for governor again, this time against the first Black governor in Massachusetts, Deval Patrick. You lost. In 2012, you ran against this country's first Black president and you got just less than 0.5% of total votes cast. In 2016, you ran against Donald Trump and Hillary.
So if you were paying attention to, this is kind of a continuation, a little bit sharper of an attack than what AOC leveled against Jill Stein recently. He's just saying like, hey, you just show up every year to be a spoiler against the Democrats. You never win.
Clinton losing significantly with 1.4 million votes cast for you, but 0 electoral college votes, which I agree with y'all needs to be abolished. But 136 million people voted. And you lost that election as well. So I want to know what the pathway to victory is for you in 2024. It can't just be.
I'd like to provide a different frame.
Shut your mouth. Watch your fucking mouth.
I want to provide.
And I also.
Can I respond, please?
May
I respond? May I respond? May I respond?
Go ahead, Angela. Go ahead.
Well, I would like to respond.
Yeah.
This is the framing of the empire and the oligarchy and white supremacy and colonialism, which wants you to feel that resistance is futile. This is about voter blaming and voter shaming.
Let me finish.
Voter blaming and voter shaming. She is 100% correct. I don't like, I'm not one of those people who's like anti-woke, who's like, oh yeah, like there's no such thing as like systemic racism or anything like that. There's definitely that stuff exists. But I don't like this constant framing of everything as white supremacy, because as you're going to see, these people, Charlemagne and Angela Rye, they're fucking rich. They're not doing bad. And this is a class issue. It's not a race issue. And the way that this race shit keeps getting thrown into the mix is it's a fucking spoiler. It's designed to be a divider, a divisive thing. Now, issue by issue, we can talk about this, right? Like, we're going to go into the weeds really on this a little bit later, but I just hate that framing that like, oh, white supremacy. Jill Stein is white. Like she's out here asking people to vote for her, and she's a white woman talking about white supremacy. And so it's like, listen, can you say that there is systemic racism and that people of color have been systemically oppressed? Absolutely. Does it still exist to a large degree? Absolutely. But this whole idea that, like, since the 90s, there has been, people of color in the mainstream, maybe not in political seats as much as there is now, but, people like Maxine Waters, and there have been, we're heading in the right direction there. So I don't like that framing, but I do like the argument that Jill Stein is making here. And I think she might have even just used that word to trigger Angela Rye, and it worked.
Just
let
no,
me
no, 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 no,
respond.
no, no,
You
no,
had
no, no,
plenty
no,
of
no,
time
no.
to-
What you're
to-
not going to say is that I'm ever parroting anything at the hands of white supremacy. This is something that's very different.
Even though you are, you're defending the Democratic Party, who's doing a fucking genocide and trying to start World War III with Russia, and clearly does not even have a viable president in the office. It's being run by like a shadow group of people. And you're like, oh, how dare you? Yeah, how dare you call me out for defending the status quo? I think the way that if Stein had, framed it more like you're defending the status quo because you're a comfortable, wealthy person, that would have been a much sharper. The race thing, just, it fucking pisses me off. Sorry.
This is me asking you again. It's a binary
well, I'm
choice
just
in an
pointing
election.
out that these
it is
are
either
the
a
talking
win
points.
or a lie. No, it's
These
not
are
a
the
talking
same
point.
talking
This is a
points.
binary choice in this election. Again, no, it's not. You're pretty much getting the same thing on a lot of levels. Outside of the Trump Vance ticket is much more, edgy. Like they're like, we're gonna get rid of, they're saying things that, even if they're not delivering on 100% on the stuff they're talking about, the fact that they're even saying this stuff on the campaign trail is massive.
Get my talking. This is not DNC talking points. This is my research,
Yes, it is.
sadly for you,
This is not DNC talking points. She just gives herself away right here.
the research says you have never won an election. You have been successful in pushing forward certain agendas as
Absolutely.
an advocate, but you have
And
never won an
we
election
are
as a
the
candidate.
one
Is that a winning
party.
strategy?
So, in order to win, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And in this case, it's
This is
many
1,
steps. Let
2,
me
3.
point.
So again, too, the point that Jill's making is a good one, because listen, she hasn't won an election yet, but she's been in the mix enough that she has experience to know how. And it's very clear that, I'm surprised that Stein didn't ever because I watched this whole interview, and at no point does she bring up Bernie Sanders and the way that the progressive movement has been stomped the fuck out of the Democratic Party. At no point does she bring that up. I mean, that's not to take anything away from, the battle that she gave here, the fight she gave, because this was great from start to finish. One of the best Breakfast Club interviews I've seen in a while. And actually great that someone like Angela Rye is there to play a foil and to really hold her feet to the fire. And I think that she was well prepared to answer these questions, and she did a fantastic job. But luckily, my stream isn't monetized yet. So even if the Breakfast Club does come at me for playing these Twitter clips, it's not like I'm making any cash. So let's keep going.
It's
4,
out.
5, 6,
Let me
7
point
steps.
out, please. You need to compare the Green Party, not with those who are taking money from AIPAC and the War Machine and Wall Street.
Okay, so another clip here I want to share with you before we go into some of the. Here is this guy kind of sums it up. He's got hashtag the resistance. So the thing that's cool about this is that now Jill Stein got into a platform and Butch Ware where they can talk to the disaffected Democrats on a mainstream level. And unlike Trump, they did a great job laying out why they're a good alternative. In that debate, Trump completely fumbled the ball. He let them make him mad. And instead of, articulating why he's a better alternative to Kamala Harris, he just screamed about immigrants and eating dogs and ridiculous horse shit. So this guy says, not a Jill Stein fan, like that. But this was the moment when Angela Rye showed us that she's a bougie key holder, because this reaction was uncalled for. These are the Negroes that stand in the way of any black progress. They are happy with the status quo. That's exactly what if I was Jill Stein, she doesn't even have to go at the Democratic thing. She can just say, you're a defender of the status quo. Jill Stein, I will end the genocide in Gaza. I will give black people reparations. I will create multiple black Wall Streets across the country. I will fight to end the disproportionate police brutality against black people. Angela Rye. How dare you? You can pretty much, it's a safe bet that Angela Rye attends dinner parties with AOC and Chuck Schumer and all the, the Democratic national cunts. And that's why she, is taking the stance that she is right here. So here's just to go a little bit deeper here with the Angela Rye thing. Check this out. This is another little piece of research I found from Yvette Carnell. And she says, Angela Rye is our class enemy. While we're fighting for reparations and an improvement to our material quality of life, she's bragging about how well she and her bougie friends are doing. This is from 2020. I'm not impoverished. I have friends who are doing very well in this country.
I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country. Us needing to all be lifted out of poverty. I'm not impoverished, and I have several middle-class friends who are doing very well in this country. And so I reject the notion that we constantly need to be talking about.
Yes, so she rejects the notion that this is a class thing, and she wants to dismiss that because she's doing well. So there she is, just flat out admitting it. Why she is the type of person who comes after the Green Party in the way that she does. So I want to go into Butch Ware a little bit because, wow, another great thing that that Jill Stein has done this cycle, I think, is to position herself as a real, alternative to the bullshit duopoly, the uniparty, is grab Butch Ware. And the more that I listen to this guy talk, the more I like him. But this is from Rashid Quelly on Twitter. He says, listening to the Breakfast Club discussion with Jill Stein, I've never seen Angela Rye this aggressive with any candidate from the Democratic Party. Never seen her loud talk or cut Democrats off from speaking. It's been clear for a long time she's a puppet of the Democrats. I mean, I can't really disagree with that. So here is a clip of Butch Ware, the man, talking about why they are an alternative to him, and Stein are an alternative to the duopoly. And this is from Sabby, and she sums it up very well. Whether you vote Team Red or Team Blue, militarized fascism wins. Yes. It doesn't. Do you want your shit sandwich on a red plate or a blue plate? That's American politics. It's Democrats that are running cop cities. Fascism is already here. Thank you, Dr. Jill Stein and Butch Ware, for schooling Charlemagne and Angela Rye. They continue to run cover for the Dems. And this is the absolute, I think, best, like one of the best snippets from this interview. Listen to this.
Team Red might be speeding us towards a kind of societal collapse, right? And fascism. Exactly. But, right. No. But the thing is that the truth of the matter is that imperialism and fascism are two sides of the same coin. One is the side that faces outwards, and the other is the side that faces inward. And I made a social media post before I got brought onto the team that said it this way: is that whether you vote Team Red or Team Blue, militarized fascism wins. Because the AIPAC and the weapons manufacturers are patrons of both networks. And just to return to that point, right? I've been on campuses. I organized a Palestinian Liberation Concert on October 21st. I organized a Black and Palestinian Solidarity panel at my local mosque on October 11th, 4 days after. Wow. Like, your brother was not backing down. And the Zionists came for my job within the month, okay? And, a Negro is still standing. So, but the point of all that is just to say that when we launch.
Look at what they're doing to Venezuela. Look at what they did to Candace Owens. We're going to get into Tucker Carlson and his good pal, Daryl Cooper in a few minutes, but
this campaign to try to actually bring people into this conversation. You see that this is actually where the American people stand. The American people do not want this forever war, and they do not want militarized fascists coming to their campuses to crack kids' heads open. I had to stand out in front of the encampment, and that's Democratic governor in California. Mayors in places like New York City. It's Democrats that are running cop cities. So the thing is bro, fascism is already here. It's just that one of it is like fascism and the other is fascism. But the truth is that the purple fascists, the purple imperialists, Team Red and Team Blue are run by the same funders, and who funds you runs you. So there's a discourse about putting off fascism, but the reality is that fascism was already here because we already can't speak freely. We already have people, university presidents, losing their job under democratic regime.
Nailing it.
We already have kids that are lining up for peaceful protests, having their heads knocked open, or you have the cops standing to the side at UCLA so the thugs can knock kids' heads open. So I'm sorry, the fear mongering ain't gonna work on me.
So that, I think, is one of the better clips from that, Butch explaining to Charlemagne and the crew that, hey, you guys, fascism's already here. Like, the idea that voting for the Democrats is going to save us from anything has been pretty much proven to be untrue. Like, where have you been for the last 20 years? Where were you during the Obama administration? There is this meme that has, I wish I could find it, but it has the I'm looking for it. But it's the, have you seen the off-ramp meme where it says wow, this one's terrible. So there was, I'm not even going to look it up. Now I'm just wasting time, but there's this meme and it has the car going on the off ramp, and there's a straight and a left, and the car's like skidding off to the right off ramp, and it says, vote Biden to stop fascism or whatever, voting for fascism, and basically voting for Biden is doing nothing to stop fascism because it's very clear, first of all, that Biden isn't running anything. So it's interesting to me that the people who think Kamala Harris is such a good idea they don't have to make this connection. They can just kind of pretend that, the last 3 years had nothing to do with her because Biden's out of the picture now. It's just a really interesting dynamic. So just kind of to close this out before we finish, one of the things that, of course, Angela Rye had to do was accuse Jill Stein of being, you guessed it, a Russian asset. And so I just want to show you a couple things about this. First of all, Angela Rye was herself accused of being a Russian bot. Check this out. How ironic was it that Angela Rye was part of the Jill Stein Breakfast Club interview? Black critics of Kamala Harris and Cory Booker push back against claims that they're Russian bots. Angela Rye and Joy Reid have speculated that American descendants of slaves using the hashtag ADOS to critique Harris and Booker are Russian bots. This part of the Jill Stein interview caught my attention. So listen to this.
She repeatedly parroted Kremlin views.
The question that was raised there was, did Russian social...
Of course they're going to do this shit. This is one of the areas, too, where, like, Charlemagne is much like he should be smarter than this as a black man who understands the way propaganda works. But no, he's on board for this dumb, Neil McCarthy bullshit.
The question that was raised there was, did Russian social media have an impact? And was I, a beneficiary of that? And the Senate.
But they said you repeatedly parroted Kremlin views and posted a
well,
campaign
you know what
video
they
from
consider
Moscow's
a
Red
Kremlin
Square.
view? They consider reparations a Kremlin view.
Oh.
They consider
They do.
the civil rights movement actually a Kremlin view. They consider racial disparities a.
Thank you, Jill motherfucking Stein. Yes. There is a meme. I think I have it bookmarked or retweeted. I gotta share this with you after this. I'll find it while I play the rest of this clip. But there's a great meme to sum this up, and I just want to congratulate Jill Stein on having the best response to this accusation I have heard yet. Civil rights is a Russian bot thing. I'm hungry. I can't eat. There's inflation. Russian bots. People are so goddamn stupid.
A Kremlin view. So these are Department of Defense talking points, and these are unfortunately the DNC talking points as well, which repeatedly tries to smear me as a Russian agent, even though it has been
idiot.
Yes, and this has been very specifically.
Let's just be blunt about that.
Found.
So again, if I were Jill Stein, I would bring up Bernie Sanders. They called Bernie Sanders a Russian agent. They call everyone a Russian agent. Nancy Pelosi called college protesters Russian agents during the protests for Gaza. So it's the whole thing is patently ridiculous, and Charlemagne laps it up like a good little doggy.
Lacking, and the report, get this, the report that was initially used to supposedly show that Russians had a social media campaign supporting me, that was written by a cybersecurity firm called the New Knowledge Corporation. New Knowledge had to disband shortly after publishing that because they were exposed for conducting an interference campaign themselves in the 2017 Senate election in Alabama. And how did they do that? They pretended to be a Russian influence campaign on social media. So they did exactly what they have accused the Russians of doing. They actually did, and put it under the false guise of being a Russian interference campaign.
And that's exactly what they're trying to do right now with Tim Pool and Lauren Chen and all those conservative voices that they're trying to say are Russian assets. As if you could ever listen to those guys talk, any of them, and think that they're pro-Russian. Like, listen to Tim Pool. Tim Pool is like stupidly pro-American on like a lot of stuff. And I love a lot of Tim Pool's commentary, and I love that he has a roundtable debate, but he's ridiculously, pro-American to the point of naivete, where it's like, how the idea that you're going to frame him as being a Russian bot is fucking ridiculous. So I just want to close this piece out. I want to share this meme with you that I think is just absolutely classic. And it's kind of the reworking of the Boars cartoon, but this guy's like, I can't afford to eat food. And this dude's like, that's Russian disinformation, right? Because that's exactly what, God bless her, Jill Stein just explained to Charlemagne, that anything that's, that the empire doesn't like is Russian disinformation now. So just one last look at this guy for you before we move on to the next big story. So this is kind of a quickie, but I'm definitely an advocate for California, and I saw this clip about California, and there's just so much hate for California, I think, that's unwarranted, because California has a lot of there's a lot of stuff that it's not really given credit for as a state, and so I want to start by just showing you this this video of Bill Maher talking to the CEO of Palantir. And it's from Eric Abinante on Twitter. And he says, Palantir CEO Alex Karp to Bill Maher. California is crazy and too woke. Also, Palantir CEO Alex Karp, I'm supporting Kamala Harris. How do you reconcile those two thoughts? Because you are a shill for a failed political duopoly. That's how you do it. I left California, obviously has gone past way too far on this hyper woke. We can get nothing done, but it doesn't have to work because it pretends to work because we're good people thing. Hyper woke, we can get nothing. Okay, so anyway, let's listen to what he has to say here, and then I'm going to show you the actual point of this.
Could you do something here in the state of California? Because we could really use some of that. And I know you you have to want help to get it. I mean, you left California, like another guy who's involved in some of this kind of stuff, which is Elon Musk.
Yeah, we were the two biggest companies to leave California early.
And the two biggest that are involved in the defense of our country. I mean, Starlink is very important.
Well, I feel like I owe California a great debt of gratitude. I went to school here. I built a company here. Obviously, California has gone in the past way too far on this kind of hyper woke. We can get nothing done, but it doesn't have to work because we pretend it works because we're good people thing. And and
could you do something here in the state of California?
So if you don't know who this guy is, I have the benefit of knowing who this guy is because I follow Max Blumenthal and the Gray Zone. But Max Blumenthal kind of has covered, and Whitney Webb as well, how Palantir is a company that basically works with the security state to help kind of sell your data to people. But I want to kind of show you a little bit more about, who these people are, or who Palantir is anyway. So check this out. We'll just do this real quick. Palantir, according to Google AI Technologies, is a software company that provides data analytics platforms for organizations to analyze and gain insights from their data. The name comes from the magical crystal balls in The Lord of the Rings that were used for communication and to see events in other parts of the world. Let's see what the Gray Zone has to say about Palantir. Cloak and Dagger military intelligence outfit at the center of U.S. digital vaccine passport push. So this from a couple years ago. Described as the most important organization you've never heard of, MITRE makes massive... So this isn't even about Palantir. This is about MITRE. Here we go. MITRE's own COVID-19 umbrella coalition includes QTEL, the venture capital arm of the Central Intelligence Agency, and Palantir, a scandal-stained private spying firm. Google wasn't going to pull up much. Let's see what else we got for Palantir from the Gray Zone. How a deviant philosophy... We don't even need to go to the Gray Zone. How a deviant philosopher built Palantir, a CIA-funded data mining juggernaut. So this is who Alex Karp is, just so you know. Since rumors began to spread that a startup called Palantir... Oh, God. Forbes has hit me with the terrible ads that don't work. You need to get your ads fixed. Since rumors began to spread that a startup called Palantir helped to kill Osama bin Laden, a story we know is pretty much fake, thanks to Seymour Hersh, Alex Karp hasn't had much time to himself. On one sun-baked July morning in Silicon Valley, Palantir's lean 45-year-old chief executive with a top-heavy mop of frazzled hair likes the grassy hills around Stanford University's massive satellite antenna known as the Dish, a favorite meditative pastime, but his solitude is disturbed by Mike, an ex-Marine, silent 6'1", 270 pounds, mostly pectoral muscle, who trails him everywhere he goes, even on the suburban stretches of Palo Alto. Steps from Palantir's headquarters, the bodyguard lingers a few feet behind. It puts a massive cramp on your life, Karp complains, his expression hidden from behind large black sunglasses. There's nothing worse for reducing your ability to flirt with someone. So that's who this guy is. He is a CIA-funded startup that mines your data. But the main reason I wanted to talk about California is there's a part of California that no one talks about. And that is how much food California produces. So this was supposed to be a really short little trip down this side street here, but this is something I just thought was interesting that I stumbled across the other night. California is the top agricultural producer in the United States, contributing to over 13% of the country's agricultural production value. Fruits and vegetable, California produces half of the fruits and vegetables grown in the U.S. Almonds, California produces 100% of the U.S. commercial supply of almonds, which are the state's most valuable export crop. Citrus, California produces nearly 60% of the U.S. citrus, including oranges, mandarins, and grapefruits. Other crops, California's leading grower of lima beans, lemons, kumquats, raspberries, strawberries, and spinach. Exporting, California is the nation's largest agricultural exporter, shipping food and commodities to more than 150 countries. The Central Valley, a 400-mile-long region in California, produces 8% of the U.S. food supply, despite only containing 1% of the country's farmland. Farms and ranches, California produces over 13% of the nation's agriculture. California grows 99% of the commercially produced crop in the United States. So I just wanted to make that point about California to let you know that aside from Silicon Valley and Hollywood, California is also the biggest producer of food in the United States. Illinois is behind it, and they're like 49% less of the total gross food supply than California is. So there's I guess the point of all this, kind of tying this all together, is just that the demonization of California is a political thing. And yeah, I mean, California has problems, but it also has, it's literally, what is it? Here, let me just share this other little data bit with you too. California is on its own as a state, is the 5th largest subnational economy in the world. And just to show you this graphic real quick from Wikipedia to bring this point home. Where's that graph? Here it is. GDP by sector. But here, this isn't even what I wanted to rank with world economies. World's 5th largest economy. Let's look at this. Here we go. This is what I wanted to find. Nominal GDP in billions ranked on 2023 estimates. United States, of course, the largest. China right behind us. Not right behind us. They're about 7 billion behind us. Germany, way down there. Japan, and California right after Japan. California's economy is bigger than India and the United Kingdom's. Look at Texas down here too. Dang, Texas coming up. So, point being, California is a very large and multi-tiered state. So this idea that it's just this monolithic liberal hellhole is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's the biggest agriculture. It's the biggest agriculture producer in the U.S. by a lot. So I want to move on now to something that I don't usually do, but my boys Russ and Keaton on Due Dissidence have been going at Daryl Cooper since the Tucker Carlson interview came out, where he kind of said that he thought Churchill was a bad guy in World War II. So the immediate response of the media at large is like, wow, this guy is a terrible person and a white supremacist, and what they typically do to anyone who kind of deviates a little bit from the norm or the popular narrative. And I'm a little disappointed in the Due Dissidence guys, but we're never going to agree 100% on everything. And I'm not going to unfollow them or send nasty notes to them, because it seems like what happened with them is, they voiced an opinion that they had, and a bunch of dipshits online came at them as with anti-Semite type rhetoric. And I mean, I even think that's an op. I think the people that are claiming to back Daryl Cooper that are coming out and saying bad stuff about the Jews are an op. They're probably Sally Albright's bots. Now, I haven't gone out and collected the data to prove that. But when this kind of shit happens, that's usually part of the whole, the whole game, and you see it now. Trump said something during the debate about people eating dogs, and now there's white supremacists marching in Ohio, aka feds, to kind of drive home the point. Look, see, he's a racist. Look at all these people that are doing things now because he said something about dogs. Oh my God, the world is ending and you must vote for the status quo, because if you don't, we're all going to collectively cry for 4 years, which is, honestly kind of why I would like to see Trump win, is just so I can listen to people like, Dana Bash and Rachel Maddow clutch their pearls and cry for 4 years, because, it's not like Trump is that verifiably different from the Democrats that much else will change. So at least I'll take a perverse pleasure in listening to people I hate, well-documented liars. I don't hate them because, of anything other than the fact that they're very disingenuous, openly dishonest liars. Anyway, getting back to the crux of this, let me play you just a little bit of the Due Dissidence clip that I'm talking about so you can kind of hear where they're coming to start. So, and I mean, listen, they do have some valid points, but let's get into it here. So here's just kind of the genesis of all this.
Sort of budding violent confrontations between nationalists and the police and so forth, which I think our natural, we like order, right? Yeah. Like Europeans, we like order, and we see things.
Okay. Right there. So a lot of what he says are dog whistles that they don't dwell on. They just kind of run right past. But take a second and listen to what he's saying. Europeans like order as opposed to who? As opposed to who?
So this is what I don't like, and so Russ is reading stuff into what this guy's saying, If the guy, I'm going to take the guy at his word, unless the guy comes out and says, hey, guess what? I'm a Nazi. I love Hitler. He's awesome. Kanye did that, Do you think Kanye's a Nazi? I mean, but also they've been saying Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist for years, and I've seen zero evidence that proves that. There's zero. Like this right here. This is the jump Russ is making. Well, he said that Europeans like order, so that means, as opposed to who? That means he's a racist Nazi, because he's basically, because he said Europeans like order, that means that other people don't. And I wish that these guys, rather than kind of knee-jerk jumping on this guy's a Nazi train with the rest of the pearl clutching shit libs in the media, would have said, you know what, we're going to invite this guy on the show and we're going to ask him questions about what did you mean by this? When you said Europeans like order, did you mean only Europeans like order? I mean, that's a jump you have to make to be like, oh, this guy's a total racist. But let's listen to a little more of this.
People who are not European, right? I mean, he's creating a contrast inherently with that framing. Europeans like order. So black people don't like order. Yellow people don't like order. Brown people don't like order.
But again, Russ, he didn't say that. You're saying that. He just said Europeans like order. That, I mean, you have to view that as a racist statement to make this jump. And, you know, maybe he is. I'm not saying that I 100% know that he's not secretly a Nazi. What I'm saying is I think it's disingenuous and unfair to just hang something like that around someone's neck when there's no real evidence for it. So far, just to recap here, this is like the silver bullet that he said Europeans like order, that he's a Nazi. So he's a Nazi because he said Europeans like order.
We uniquely like order. So now you're starting to get to the heart of what Darryl Cooper's worldview is. And the reason, you know, they say you know a tree by its fruit. At least half of the pushback we got on our segment were just straight out anti-Semitic, just straight out Jew. Oh, not surprising. Jews would think that. Well, I mean, so why are people like that attracted to Darryl Cooper? Because he's saying things like this.
Also, because the fucking people who run the bot networks online want you to believe that those type of people are his followers. I mean, we've seen this time and time again, Russ, man. I'm really disappointed that you're not coming at this from more of a skeptical angle. But again, let's listen a little bit more.
He's saying things like this. In the end, he is putting out a lot of innuendo that is in the family of, traditional Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazi, neo-Confederate, Western chauvinist kind of ideology. If it did not appeal to people like that, we wouldn't be hearing things like that.
So the term Western chauvinist, okay, I will give that to Russ. This guy is, and they bring this up in this kind of conversation. He worked for the State Department or something like that. He's definitely got Fed energy. I wouldn't even deny that. But the idea that he's a racist, come on. I mean, you have to understand too, Russ, you know, when you're saying, oh, the stuff he's saying is in dog whistle, it's in the family of stuff that's KKK or, you know, Confederate. For years, Russ, for years and years, anyone who challenged the establishment has been lumped into this genre of thought. And this is the jump that they have to make. They did this to Ron Paul when he was running in the primary. And I remember it well because I'm friends with the guy who used to work for the Clintons. He was a Clinton lawyer. I mean, we're not very close anymore. We worked together, but I remember posting. I think he unfriended me on Facebook. But I remember talking about this with him when Ron Paul was running, and he's like, "Well, Ron Paul's a white supremacist, and he runs with all these racists and stuff like that." By that dynamic, I mean anyone. You can tie anyone to someone else's actions, you know. And to me, it's like, okay, but Ron Paul might have had people in his. It was something like he had a newsletter with someone that had said racist stuff or whatever. And it's like, once you start making those jumps, you're like, oh, well, this guy associates with this person, so therefore he is those people. Yeah, you can tell a lot about people by who they associate with, but that doesn't mean they're guilty of that person's crimes. And especially in this day and age, I take people at their word directly because everything is a goddamn smear campaign. But let's listen to just a little more of this before we jump into some other pieces
of Cooper.
Yeah, it's also just once again a straw man and very deceptively reductive when he says people who think Churchill is a hero are very happy with the way London looks now. He's making the globalism versus nationalism framing.
Exactly.
And he's also...
And that framing, globalism versus nationalism, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the attack on nationalism or people wanting to have sovereignty in their country is those people are racists. Make America great again. That's racist. They're going back to the people that want like have US sovereignty. I'm not a conservative and I never have been, but I understand now, especially now, the mindset of a conservative that's trying to like keep some element of, what the United States was or is in place, and you can't ever completely fight being part of a global economy. It's part of being a part of the world, but this idea that we should just allow the United States original values and the things that kind of made us a good country deteriorate, is racist. And this has always been the framing with anyone who, from the 90s. Glenn Greenwald did a great piece about how the Clinton era, they started this whole mentality about domestic terrorists, and anyone who's like kind of against the status quo is a domestic terrorist, a racist, a white supremacist. So this is a very ingrained thought process. So I'm not gonna keep going with Keaton and Russ. I love these guys, but I do think that they're wrong about this particular issue. So I'm going to jump over to a conversation that Dave Smith had with Daryl Cooper, and he just kind of addresses some of this stuff. So here's the first piece.
And he reinforced it and said he's not exaggerating. In 30 years in media and being at the center of a million controversies, he's never seen anything like this. So no, I definitely didn't anticipate that. I didn't even know we were going to talk about World War II is the funny thing. So I did.
So already it's looking like there is a wave of pushback against something that this guy said. And instantly they're going to call him a racist and do everything they can to make sure that no one listens to what he has to say. And instantly just dismisses. This is how people get dismissed from the conversation. And again, I have not seen any verifiable evidence that this guy is a Nazi, other than, like I just showed you, Russ making that kind of emotional jump from, well, he said that Europeans like order. What does he mean by that? I mean, I take it he means Europeans like order. That doesn't mean that because he thinks that Chinese people don't. Chinese people clearly like order. Look at their country. Anyway, let's listen to this.
I would have been more prepared and probably made my case a little bit more clearly. But if anything, I would have thought that our conversation about, the ongoing population replacement of European countries and how, any monarch in the past that would even imagine that he could do something like that would end up with their heads cut off. I would have thought that might have generated a little more controversy. But I mean, it's worth, it really is worth asking, like, why this particular thing did, because that really got to the heart of what Tucker and I were talking about. My comments about Churchill were, as I said in the interview, like kind of hyperbolic and provocative. I was repeating something I had said to my buddy Jocko, and I told him I did it to provoke him, be hyperbolic, right? But the real thrust of the conversation was why is it that this particular issue, World War II, is, as we saw this last week, it is the third rail. It is the untouchable, absolute landmine that you have to stay away from, And I think that that's gotten more intense, not less, as the internet has opened up discourse, and as the narrative has started to kind of splinter and the few sources that are used to being able to control it have begun to lose control of it. They're throwing kind of ever more intense tantrums,
So I think the thing that kind of disappointed me most about Russ and Keaton's take on this too is Keaton kind of proudly was like, I'm not going to listen to what that guy has to say. I'm just going to call him a Nazi and move on. I'm just going to dismiss him as a pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler guy and completely move on to the next thing, because, and again, they can have their opinion. I'm not going to stop listening to Do Dissonant. I love these guys. I think they're great. But I do want to, when this kind of stuff happens, I think it's worthwhile to examine it closely And because as political, people and former Bernie people as a whole, the goal is to make things happen, enact positive change. And we're never going to do that if we're constantly drawing lines in the sand and standing on different sides of them and pointing at each other and calling, you're a communist, you're a Nazi. It doesn't make any sense unless there's real valid reason to believe that. And I just don't see it with this guy. He did an entire piece breaking down the Israel thing that's kind of like showing the Palestinian cause in a positive light, or at least in a light that people can relate to, and would a Nazi do that? Anyway. This is where he kind of describes the whole "you're supporting Hitler" thing.
Here's the clip that Pierce Morgan is playing me to get you. I'm like, but what about that part in the clip where he just said, I'm being hyperbolic, or I'm not? You'd assume if I'm criticizing Churchill, that means I must be supporting Hitler. But of course, I'm not supporting Hitler. And they go, this guy's supporting Hitler. And you're like, is everybody just so hysterical that they're incapable of listening to what was actually said, even when they're playing the clip on their...
Okay. My StreamYard is tripping right now. It won't let me go to full screen. I don't like that. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. Oh, wait. No. Sorry about the technical difficulties here. Listen to this. This is where he talks about the supporting Hitler stuff.
The clip that Pierce Morgan is playing me to get you. I'm like, but what about that part in the clip where he just said, I'm being hyperbolic, or I'm not? You'd assume if I'm criticizing Churchill, that means I must be supporting Hitler. But of course, I'm not supporting Hitler. And they go, this guy's supporting Hitler. And you're like, is everybody just so hysterical that they're incapable of listening to what was actually said, even when they're playing the clip on their show? It's just really wild.
Well, if you think about like what a symbol is, right? Like Adolf Hitler was a person.
So this is good. I think this is probably one of the best things he kind of says in response to this controversy.
He was a leader of Germany, in the 30s and 40s. To us, what he is he's a symbol, right? The Holocaust is a symbol, just like the cross and God and the devil, whatever their external reality and grounding in the real world. To us, they're symbols. Like that's how they activate for us. And so, like what does that mean? Like a symbol is like an image that is implanted like deep in our subconscious by the culture at a very early age, that is attached to and meant to activate like a whole constellation of feelings and emotions and reactions and responses, and every society, this is how societies bind themselves together. They use symbols to do it, right? Like when you see people get super, super angry and worked up over somebody desecrating the flag, part of that is because that symbol's lodged in there, and all of those hostile responses are sort of, that's what's meant to be evoked by something like that. But also it's because on some ground level, like people have some idea, even if they're not thinking about it consciously, that if everybody starts kind of moving to a place where we don't care that the flag is being desecrated, that we're going to come apart in certain ways. Certain things are going to come apart that we all sort of rely on, even if that's not like really elucidated, clearly in people's minds. And I think that when you look at World War II, it's very much like that. Like people have this, from a very, very early age, literally elementary school, like it is put in your head that this is different. This is not really a historical event. This is a sort of world historical mythological event. And I don't say myth to mean that it's false or a lie, but in this symbolic sense, right? That it plays in the culture. Like I told Tom yesterday.
So the point he's making here is a very good one, and it's the point that this is like religion. He uses the term mythology, and he says, I'm not saying that it's a lie, but it's an event that has been mythologized in our psyches, like religion. So anyone who questions the rock solid foundational narrative that our society is built around is a bad person. And that is why there was such a visceral reaction to him, saying some stuff that people don't want to hear. People don't want to take, our entire rationale for the things we've done in the world since World War II. And I make this point all the time. Name a war since World War II where the U.S. was the good guy. Can you? I mean, put it in the chat if you can, because I'll most likely be able to debate you on it. But that's the point. Again, this is a thing. This is an issue that has been religiousized, exactly like what was done during the pandemic recently, where all of a sudden you can't question the authorities, because if you do, you're a white supremacist, anti-vaxxer, pro-Trump, ready to overthrow democracy person. And it all started with this. And I think, we're going to get into one of the proofs, which I think is a little iffy in just a second, but let me let him finish his point here.
Like it's a load-bearing story, right? There's a lot that rests on this particular story being just in this way. And even if people, don't have, even if they're not sort of breaking this down to themselves, like consciously in their minds, like they have an idea that if we start to question this particular story, if we start to pick it apart and look at it critically, because symbols never hold up to like endless critical analysis. I mean, that's one of the problems like that we run into in post-modernity, right? You can do that with everything. And so I'm not like saying these things are bad, they're necessary. But you have to look at the functions that they're actually serving. And if you look at the functions that the World War II myth has at least, has come to serve, surely some things, are solid. It definitely ingrained in the Western world, like in people from a very early age in a way that was probably never possible before, a sort of visceral reaction against group hatred based on, race and things like that. I mean, when you really think about like people today and people, if you just go back any time in human history, 100 years ago, like the level of just innate tolerance in your average American, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's truly unbelievable that transformation didn't happen over centuries. It happened really over the course of a generation or two. And the World War II story being so central to, the order we're living in is a big part of it, And so that's good. That's great. But then also,
that sounds like a Nazi to me.
World War II has been used to essentially justify the U.S. global order, the U.S. empire, if you want to call it that. It's been used to sort of justify the special status and privileges that are accorded to the state of Israel, that sort of place it above the critical evaluation and standards that we would expect above Western democratic nations, things like that. And even you mentioned democracy, like Hans Hermann Hoppe. Democracy is one of those symbols too, and that's why people got triggered when they read that book. Is that symbol was triggered, and the cascade of emotions and everything else just overwhelmed the fact that he was, everything else he said. And democracy is one of those things. Like you can't even question. I mean, questioning democracy is like that's a big project. I think you got to be very careful with that, because whenever you overthrow the entire order of a society, that can go in unpredictable and dangerous ways. And the people who
so anyway, that's the kind of the point that I wanted to share that he made there about the utility of World War II and why people react so hard to it, being criticized. So the one point of that I will give Russ and Keaton is this tweet that Daryl did about the Olympics. So this is another one of the things that they're saying is proof that he's a Nazi. And, obviously you have to believe that that's the case because he said something that wasn't complimentary about Winston Churchill.
Really brag about is that we beat the racists and the Nazis. They haven't put up a W since then. And so now every villain has to be one of those two things. You're either a racist or a Nazi. It's all kind of perfectly works out.
Did you catch that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, and those are the prime evils of this regime, right? And again, to point that out is not to say that they're not evils. It's just, in our society, people, and I'm sorry you had to answer for this on Piers Morgan, but I put out a tweet right after the Paris Olympics ceremony.
So this is where he talks about his tweet, his problematic tweet.
Money at the big, the Last Supper thing, where I posted a picture of Hitler and his boys walking in front of the Eiffel Tower, and I posted a picture of that Last Supper desecration. And I said that the outcome of the picture on the right was preferable to the one on the left, or something like that, which I took down after a few people who I trust to tell me when I'm out of bounds, let me know that they thought I was. But I told them, the reason that I did that is I was outraged by what I was watching at the Paris Olympics, and I was reaching for the most extreme example possible to show to express my outrage about this. And in our society, it's not the devil. If I would have posted a picture of Satan looming over the Eiffel Tower and said that this is better than that, nobody would even got it. It would.
So basically, his tweet was him being triggered by the Paris Olympics thing, which I think is absolutely stupid to begin with. First of all, it's France, so let France be France. But second of all, this idea that it was somehow like a mockery of the Last Supper or something, and then that's some kind of sacred thing. He just got in trouble for slaughtering a sacred cow when it comes to the World War II Winston Churchill thing. And now he's kind of mad that someone else slaughtered a sacred cow that he finds sacred, which is the Christianity thing. Now, you can say what he tweeted out was, pro-Nazi or whatever. I mean, I think it was just him being triggered, and he kind of explains that was the case. He was triggered by the Paris Olympics thing, and so he was trying to be provocative again. And again, Kanye does this kind of shit. There are people that do it, I think, that are not racist, but it's going to create a certain amount of vitriol when you slaughter a sacred cow like that. I think in the case of the Olympics thing, I don't even think that was their intention necessarily. But the fact that religious people were so upset by it, I think they were happy about that, So anyway, this tweet that he did here, again, is probably the most credible evidence that he's a Nazi. And I don't think that it's credible at all.
Wouldn't have landed at all because Hitler's the devil. And the Nazis are the legions of hell. And, in Germany, that's it. Every society has a heaven and hell. Every society has a God and a devil. And, and they don't have to think of it that way. They don't necessarily it may be in totally different terms. It may be in secular terms. It may be in mythological terms that divide up God into many and devil, the devil into many, evil spirit, whatever it is. But we've all got those. It's just, it's a basic structure of the human mind. And in our society, that's it's one of the reasons I'm really convinced that there's always been just as there's an extreme focus and fascination with World War II and the Holocaust on the side of, you have to treat it as this sacred thing and treat it differently from everything else and don't be critical about it. There's also, on the other side, there's always just been this undercurrent somewhere, even if it's just, a punk rock thing, or today it's like an online thing or whatever of positive fascination with Hitler and the Nazis. And I like, my way of looking at that is every generation has its devil worshippers, and not all of them are serious. Like the people who would say that, I'm a Satanist, a lot of times they're just trolls or whatever. But the devil is always going to attract a certain amount of attention from both directions, and so when you take a historical event like that and elevate it to that level and make it a myth, you're always going to have like two sides of that, two extreme reactions to doing that.
Yeah,
so there you have it. And just to kind of close this out, this is the mainstream brunch liberal take on this I happened to see this morning. And this is, of course, the major narrative right now unfolding. This historian got internet famous as a big lie apologist. Now he's defending Nazis. In 2021, Daryl Cooper went viral with a thread blaming the media for MAGA boomers' belief in Trump's election fraud lies. So the profile of right-wing podcaster Daryl Cooper, aka Martyr Made, got an unfortunate boost this week thanks to an already infamous appearance on Tucker Carlson's podcast. As of this writing, the Martyr Made podcast is the top-ranked show on iTunes, ahead of the New York Times Daily, the Joe Rogan. That was short-lived, as Russ and Keaton outlined, and it was almost kind of like they were like gleeful about it, like we called this guy a Nazi, and now he's not number one anymore. And it's like, okay, good, I'm glad that people like Russ and Keaton have the audience they do, because 99.9% of the issues, they are 100% correct on them. This is one of the issues I think they might be a little bit out of their depth on. And I think that what they should have done, rather than just calling Cooper a Nazi, is invited him on the show and asked him the questions that they're, kind of positing here. Anyway. He's got over 250,000 followers on X. His sit down with Carlson was even boosted by Elon Musk, who later quietly deleted his supportive post. Cooper counts Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance among his X followers. Among new right influencers, Cooper is kind of a big deal. Carlson praised Cooper as the best and most honest popular historian in the United States and lauded his work on the forbidden topic of trying to understand World War II. Putting aside the abject silliness of saying World War II is a forbidden subject anywhere on this planet, he didn't say that. He said criticizing the popular narrative on any level, or looking past the idea that, we were all just the good guys and they were all just the bad guys, and kind of like looking into the nuance of that. No one is saying that, oh, it's okay what they did. No one is justifying it. But as we've seen in recent days, there's a lot more. History is written by the winners. And so it's good to, like, if you've ever read a book like The People's History of the United States, for example, there are counter narratives in that book to what you learn in a high school or college history class, because history is written by the winners. So there is validity in going into the weeds with this stuff and unraveling some of these narratives a little bit, unless you're a knee-jerk, brunch liberal. So he didn't say it was a forbidden subject. Just asking questions style of ahistorical revisionism, which frequently includes Nazi apologia and Holocaust skepticism. He called Winston Churchill the chief villain of World War II and said that the murder of 6 million Jews was humane because there was no food to feed the prisoners of war. So if you'll notice here too, the way that they word these articles, this word is in quotes, and this word is in quotes, because that's not what he said. He did say this, that's in quotes, but there's no context around it. Their job is to gin up outrage for the Democrats against anyone who is threatening to the status quo. These sentiments are hardly uncommon in Cooper's output. In a since deleted tweet from July, Cooper posted two photos. One was of Adolf Hitler and his high command stalking through Paris with the Eiffel Tower in the background. The other was of a drag performers in the Paris Olympics opening ceremony who appeared on the TV broadcast for mere moments. Cooper wrote that the Nazi Victory Lap photo was infinitely preferable in virtually every way to the Olympics photo. And there's no reason to believe this was mere trolling. So I think the point that he was trying to make with that, if I'm being, I guess, what's the word? If I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, he was trying to say that when society gets to a point where it's like that, basically, degenerated, people, are going to vote for something to stop that, and that's largely probably how the Nazis rose to power. I mean, it is how they rose to power. Everything was shit in Germany, so it was easy for someone like Hitler to come in and blame people for those problems. So no one's reading that into it. They're just like, this guy's a Nazi who somehow also like wrote a thing, did an entire piece unraveling the Israel thing and kind of like painting the Palestinian movement in a more favorable light than it's ever been painted to people on the right. And I think this, again, is a reason why this is happening. He's a Nazi because he's not all in on the Israel narrative or this narrative either. And this is an easier one to attack him on because, as he said, this is mythologized in the minds of Americans as this thing that you can't question. And we were the good guys, and that's it. Pretty gross, right? This is MSM. Pretty gross, right? So where did this guy come from? How did he cultivate such a large audience? Oh my God, pretty gross. It's so gross. It all started with a long Twitter thread back on July 2021, in which Quebec created, discussions with the gross. So gross. Oh my God, that's so gross. Discussions were with enough boomer tier Trump supporters who believe the 2020 election was fraudulent. For his ability to extract a general theory about their perspective in dozens of tweets, Cooper purported to explain that the reasons that tens of millions of Americans believe Trump's thoroughly and decisively debunked big lie. In short, he claimed it's all the mainstream media and institutions' fault. Trump-supporting boomers can't be expected to have agency, nor can they be blamed for believing grifters and media scam artists selling them conspiracy theories. In Cooper's telling, they are mere victims in a grand conspiracy to mislead the public, and therefore can't be blamed for latching on to Trump's craven democracy-assaulting lie. So, I mean, just this paragraph on its own is a hodgepodge of brunch liberal. Oh my God, that's so gross. The reason people believe Trump's lie is because people like MSNBC are full of horse shit that they spew. They just spent months saying that Joe Biden was like good to go. And I just showed you a clip of him, introducing Zelensky as President Putin. According to Cooper, the behavior of the corporate press is really what radicalized them. They hate journalists more than they hate any politician or government official because they feel most betrayed by them. MSNBC actually, delivering the truth here. They're of course saying it's bullshit, but he's 100% right about that. And now you see why there is such a, ginned up outrage about this guy because of this type of stuff, because he's telling the media what they don't want to hear. The behavior of the corporate press is really what radicalized Trump supporters. They hate journalists more than they hate any politician or government official because they feel the most betrayed by them because you guys are liars. The thread continued with vague innuendos and a gish gallop. A gish gallop? What does that even mean? Of semi-relevant information. A gish gallop. Oh my God, it's so gross. And it had a gish gallop of semi-relevant information. Did Nina Jankowicz write this? But at no time did it put any responsibility at the feet of Trump, Carlson, or any of the other grifters and media scam artists who brain poisoned their followers with an entirely false narrative that most of them believe to this day. Sounds like someone I know, MSNBC. Cooper's thread went viral thanks to endorsement by numerous high-profile MAGA influencers like Donald Trump Jr. as well as fellow travelers. Oh my God, so gross. They're so gross. So you get the idea. There is a concerted effort to make anyone who questions the approved narratives into a racist. And, I really, again, I wish that Keaton and Russ would have just rather than jumping to this like, well, he's clearly a Nazi thing. They're smarter than that. They should have invited him on the show and asked him the questions directly that they have and gotten thorough answers like Dave Smith did. I mean, Dave Smith is also Jewish and, is clearly not part of this brunch liberal zombie cult that, anyone who questions anything is immediately a right-wing grifter, racist, dog whistle, whatever you want to say. So we have been going for almost 2 hours, and I'm just going to close out today with this Orff piece on Joe Biden, because again, these are the people who we're supposed to be believing, and anyone who says and people like Daryl Cooper who have, researched and proposed alternative viewpoints are the devil. And you just need to trust these people. But I usually like to try to end on something funny, and this is funny in a very sad, pathetic way. And so again, I've said this so many times, Matt Orfalea is the Jon Stewart of our time. This is the type of thing, I'm not going to show the whole thing. I think you should go to Matt's channel and subscribe. It's ORF, 0RF. And hopefully he doesn't ping me for it. Doesn't matter. I'm not making money, so I can show whatever I want. I'm free to be demonetized. So check this out. This is an absolutely brilliant supercut of the media pretending that Joe Biden is a coherent and acceptable candidate for president.
Biden's fiery State of the Union address.
I'm here tonight to show what I believe is the way forward.
He was absolutely on fire.
Joe Biden was on fire.
You were on fire.
You brought that Irish fire tonight.
Fired us all up.
Biden was on fire.
At the top of his game.
He's on fire.
Smoking. He's on fire. Robust and clear.
Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley. Emboldening others to do what they wish. Big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws, make sure everyone has a fair shot. RGTP is up. I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. Guarantee the right to ABF so builders can get federally financing. Federal levels over $1 trillion. $1 million. Millions of families can get.
So this is just so brilliant because Orfalea is taking the press and saying, oh, Joe Biden is so amazing. He's on fire. And then cutting it up with actual footage from the speech they are talking about. Now, these are the people who are telling you that Daryl Cooper's a Nazi. These are the people that are telling you that, Kamala Harris is the greatest thing since sliced bread now.
Yet they need to go to work watching auto jobs in the future to instigate the collection.
Joe Biden's fiery and energetic performance.
Fiery and energetic.
Fiery and energetic.
Energetic and fiery. Energetic and fiery.
Fiery, energized.
That fiery energy. Biden was energetic and fiery.
High energy and fiery.
He had that fire in the belly.
Right? I mean, he had that fire in the belly.
Stamina and the fire in the belly.
He clearly has the stamina.
A couple weeks ago, I did a piece called Hypnosis Tools of the Empire. Here you go.
He has the stamina and the energy, the fire in the belly to show that he has the energy and the fire in the belly to serve another term.
To pursue a career of service.
And none of us are talking about age this morning because of the fiery performance.
Look, people have had a lot of questions about President Biden, whether it's about his age or ability, but I think he put those to rest last night. I think it was fiery.
Very fiery.
It was forceful.
Fiery, forceful, and fiery. State of the Union.
Forceful.
Biden was forceful.
Joe Biden forcefully answered the pundits who say he is too old.
Anyone who watched that speech saw Biden is strong.
His voice was strong. So strong.
Very strong.
He seemed to get stronger.
Like the stronger he is, the stronger he gets.
Strong at the beginning, strong in the middle, strong at the end.
Strongest speech.
Really projected. Strength.
With strength. Pretty strong.
Strong and boisterous.
Very strong. Really strong.
Biden proved he has the strength and mental agility to be an effective president.
You notice all these people like jumping in and lying about Joe Biden are people like Jennifer Rubin, who also lied about the Iraq war and the Ukraine and everything else.
Biden's fiery State of the Union speech.
The man Trump belittles as Sleepy Joe seemed quite fiery.
So much for Sleepy Joe.
He wasn't Sleepy Joe Biden, but he was fiery.
President Biden's fiery.
Fiery State of the Union address.
And if you watch that speech, you'd have no doubts Biden is going to win this election and then have a great second term.
There's no other path that guarantees that Palestinians can live in peace with peace and dignity.
I thought he was extraordinary in terms of articulating.
It's transformative in humanitarian crisis. Overwhelmingly benefit the top 1%.
Biden articulating very clear.
Hamas ended this conflict by releasing hostages.
1%.
Benefit the top 1%.
Biden articulating very clear.
Hamas ended this conflict by releasing hostages, laying down arms, could end it by releasing the hostages, laying down arms, and surrendering.
He could not have made it clearer. He could not have done it better. And he did an unbelievable job last night.
I've always known what endures toward an enduring, something more enduring.
So powerful.
So powerful.
I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends, my God, what freedom else would you take away?
Very powerful last night.
He feels political win. He viewed it as a political win for me.
One of the finest moments of Joe Biden's presidency.
The leadership of Israel, I say this. I'd be a winner, not really.
Oh my God. Go subscribe to Matt Orfala. That is absolutely brilliant. And I like to send that to my liberal friends who are like, oh yeah, Kamala Harris. I'm like, yeah, remember this? Remember a couple weeks ago when they were selling you fiery Joe Biden? And now you got to jump on board with this.
Oh, joy of joy. Oh, joy.
All right, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Catch me on Twitter, like and subscribe, all that good shit. And we'll see you out there soon. Take good care of yourselves. We're gonna top it off here with your boy Anthony Blinken singing U.S. foreign policy. Take care of yourselves.
Keep on bombing lots of people.